FOODPathS is organizing FEBA in 2022 in Brussels, bidder to discuss the future of EU sustainable food systems.
The path to sustainable food systems leads to the FOODPathS Festival in Brussels. Cheers to that!
Because for shaping our food systems towards sustainability, we need all brains and hearts out there.
Because your voice is essential for shaping European sustainable food systems.
FOODPathS shows us the importance of involving farmers and the food industry from the first beginning to achieve better solutions for the food system.
To have conversations about minimizing trade-offs and maximizing core benefits for sustainable food systems in Europe and across the world.
Come join us in this 3-day event. Grasp your chance to learn about the Prototype Partnership and give your feedback on how we can work together to transform our current food systems into ones that are sustainable for climate, people and health.
Hi, if you're interested in topics related to the sustainable food systems, you should come to Brussels for the FOODPathS Festival. It will be a great place to meet and discuss the future of us and our planet.
Because it's gonna be fun and we're gonna have a lot of food system conversations together.
To share a delicious meal.
To join our networking sessions and meet many other food system actors.
Finally, a European inclusive partnership dream comes true. For this and millions of other reasons, you should join the FOODPathS Festival.
See you there.
We need you.
See you in Brussels.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the FOODPathS Festival. Thank you for being here, both in person and online. I am Damien Guimont with INRAE Transfer. I'm the project manager for FOODPathS, and I am your moderator this afternoon. Over the next 3 days, we invite you to take part in what a festival should be, a space to gather, to share ideas, to be inspired, and to celebrate this collective journey toward more sustainable food systems in Europe and beyond. I'll give you a quick glimpse of the agenda. So today we're celebrating the Sustainable Food Systems Partnership Prototype. Tomorrow will be about landing the Sustainable Food System Partnership Prototype into the reality. And that will include also site visits. And then on Thursday, we'll try and answer the question, what's next? Also, stay here later today. We'll have a cocktail and networking session. And without further ado, please let me introduce not one of our guests, but really one of our hosts of this event, Hugo De Vries. He's a research director at INRAE, the French National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and the Environment. As coordinator of the Horizon Europe-funded FOODPathS, he leads our collective efforts to develop a prototype for an inclusive, multi-actor partnership aimed at transforming Europe's food systems. As such, he works to ensure that sustainability is a shared responsibility across all sectors. Please welcome Hugo De Vries of FOODPathS.
Yes, good afternoon to all of you here physically present and also online. It's a great honor and pleasure to welcome you on behalf of our full FOODPathS team. And we are extremely grateful and honored that you are here as speaker, as panelist, but also as active participants. You have no right to sleep in the coming 2 days. That's already one message. There are several others coming. We are extremely happy because with Niels and with others, we have started 6 years ago this kind of adventure, creating a partnership on sustainable food systems. That was a wish of the European Commission together with the SCAR, the Standing Committee on Agricultural Research, representing member state representatives. Some of them are here. And they asked us to develop this partnership. What is it about? If you look to each of these words, the definitions are given. Here I've given also the English dictionaries, but since a few days you are allowed to use English terms again. So we are very happy, brothers in arms, apparently, or for the young generation, it's You Belong to Me. Who is you and me, I don't know, but that's the song of Taylor Swift. So that's for the next generation. What we know at least is all those words. And so what is new? You can ask yourself. The Commission was spending 5 million euros to our consortium for nothing new. All the definitions were given. In fact, I really like to express my gratitude to the Commission and to you all, because it's your tax money, at least for the ones who are paying taxes. If there are some people who are not paying taxes, that's not a problem, because then we are even more inclusive today. But if you are paying taxes, we are extremely happy that you were supporting this initiative. Because you can ask yourself, is there then really nothing new? But why did then the United Nations define a 17th Sustainable Development Goal on partnerships? Why did the European Commission massively invest in partnerships, co-funded, co-programs, institutionalized? Does it have something to do with bringing together very different actors that maybe help to rebuild the resilience of our food systems? Or is it just a very simple question because the future of our children starts today? If you look to what our children will face in 2050, those figures are based on reports. A warmer planet or maybe even an ice age. Both is possible. A part of their playing grounds deteriorated, or they are all connected globally, 2/3 of their friends without access to water. Those figures are not only giving a bad impression of where we are, it is an alarming and a need for change. So we need definitely to do something. We can become depressive of it. On the other hand, we can also look to what's taking place. And luckily, with FOODPathS and our partners, we have seen many, many examples of positive signs or positive contributions to the sustainable food systems of tomorrow. This is just a snapshot at different scales with different actors in different contexts. So those are giving hope. Also, a lot of narratives by writers that are presented. Just a few books are listed here. But there are examples, and partly based on what we have seen in history, that can help us and help others to jointly change our courses. Because that is necessary, like an old Chinese verb says, if we don't change our courses today, we end up where we are today heading to. And that is possibly not the best outcome. So we need to change it. That was also the start of FOODPathS. Even before FOODPathS, we also were asked to build our own narrative. And why? I've only 1 minute left. There is, you can say we are not writers, we are no Shakespeare's, etc. But to build a narrative with very different actors, and that was us, being inclusive with very different actors, if this narrative is built together, then there is also a higher result or a better result to have a committed partnership. And that is maybe the most important. So we are happy that our children now have found people who are willing together to work for them. They are willing to change our courses and curves. If you look to the outcomes of what we are producing today, a famous Nobel Prize winner here in Belgium said, systems that show endless growth always end up in chaos or an overheated planet. So we need to change our courses to something that is evolving between the limits of our planet and between the limits of our society. You can memorize this as music. If you want that your children want to hear the music as well, musical waves should never die out, then you can immediately criticize us. Those musical waves are not produced in a single food system, but in multiple interacting ones. But then we have the option to orchestrate the activities of many. Leave space to all those food systems to organize themselves, but at a global level, we need to have this orchestration to get an harmonic outcome. We know if one is playing out of tune, the overall outcome is unharmonic. And with that, I like to end with a big thanks to our consortium. They represent cities, regions, states, ministries, funding agencies, EU-wide organizations, global organizations at the public to private and the philanthropic side. And they all were telling us their stories. We have collected them, we have analyzed them, and we are going to present the outcomes and the lessons learned to you. I'd like to ask you, please give your feedback, because we have been building it. It's never good enough. You need to bring in your expertise to make it better and better fitting to your own experiences. We like to do this in a festival atmosphere because our main organizer, who is unfortunately not here, Matteo, he is from Italy, and in Italy everything is a party. Only in Italy, sometimes the parties are ending up in chaos. So we are there with the rest of us to keep it between the limits that we are setting those days. Enjoy it, please.
Thank you, Hugo. So indeed, the next session, as you said, is about presenting what we did in FOODPathS and also asking all of you for feedback. And we will do this in a few different ways. So the next 6 speakers, as you can see, we have a marathon of speakers here coming to the stage. So the next 6 will be about presenting the partnership puzzle pieces. Short presentations of each of the ripe elements. And then the 7th one, as you notice, there is a 7th chair, will be about putting all pieces together, how to make the prototype partnership puzzle. And then we'll have a Q&A session, but the Q&A session really starts now. So you are welcome to ask questions through the Slido. You can scan the QR code or go to slido.com and enter the hashtag Festival 2025, both in the room and online. For online participants, please use the Slido and no other means. So that's one way, and the other way, I will display again the QR code in case, but the other way, as you found on your chairs, is a paper form for you to give feedback also. So on this form, you have 7 spaces for each of the 7 speakers. So please take notes. There are also questions for you that we ask to you. And at the end of the session, we ask if you would like to share them or share your notes with us, to put them in a box at the registration desk. Okay? So these are the two ways that we invite you to give feedback. And with that, I will introduce our first speaker. So the way it will go is each speaker has about 4 minutes for a quick talk to really give you the most important points about their respective puzzle pieces. And then to stay on stage and just take a chair and wait for the Q&A session, which will go live and will be for all of the 7 speakers. Okay, so without further ado, we'll now introduce our first speaker, Niels, who is someone who's spent more than 30 years rethinking how we grow, govern, and sustain our food systems. Please welcome Dr. Niels Hallberg from Aarhus University.
Thank you. I take this. So, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to stand here after, under Hugo's guidance, such a successful partnership and work we've done. And I have only, what was it, 10 minutes, so I'll go quickly. And Hugo already told us that we haven't fixed that food system yet. But how do we actually know? And do we know if it's on the right track? Do we even agree what this sustainable food systems transition is about? This primitive, kind of naive food systems illustration I always use, and forgive me for those who've seen it 100 times before, just let us remind that all these yellow are outcomes of a food system that needs to be somehow improved, both when it comes to farmers' income, which is the talk of Brussels these years, but also the environmental impact, the climate, the dietary health, etc. And they are interdependent, so that's why we frantically try to work out how can we think about improving them all at once by handling all these interactions and feedback loops, etc., etc. And so we need also to be able to follow in what direction then this food system is transitioning, and if it is transitioning. And so we need some kind of an observatory for that. And not only what these actors do, what their activities are, the gray boxes here, and the outcomes, the yellow ones, but also we need to understand and see how do these feedback loops work, the yellow arrows, for example, the interdependency, how interdependent are actually climate impact of food and farmers' income, to give one example. So we need an observatory that can actually also give us guidance to understand that. Huh? So who's actually also interested, who's going to use that information in an observatory is something that we have pondered and had a lot of focus groups and workshops on over the last 3 years. And we also did a review of what is supposedly there already on farm level, for example, the Farm Sustainability Data Network. SOSFENS has done something on indicators on a food system. There's FAO's database. And then recently the Commission, or the JRC, I should say, developed their food systems monitoring dashboard. A very impressive thing with a lot of indicators, data supported. And but none of these really fit the purpose I was describing of understanding the interactions. They don't really tell the full story. So we're still working, and we have produced a report then in proposal also to the Future Foods Partnership of how we can continuously work towards a food systems observatory that also includes narratives, that also includes science-based and stakeholder-based interpretations of data from different viewpoints. And I don't have time to show all these bullet points, but some of the questions that still needs to be, I think we need to be better at, is defining the boundaries. What is actually the food system? Which food system? Hugo said food systems. We don't even know to delineate a food system, hence to define the indicators that are there. So there's still a lot of work to even be able to follow if things are moving in the right direction and if there are synergies between these different sustainability outcomes or not. So you can read more about that in our extensive deliverable, and that's all I can say about this now. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels. Next up is someone who knows how to turn research strategies into real-world impact, especially when it comes to funding. Please welcome Dr. Nicolas Hassan from Project Management Jülich. Nicolas.
Thanks. Well, thank you, Damien. Thanks and welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here today. FOODPath is always very special, so I look forward to the next couple of hours and days with all of you together. It's great that Niels spoke beforehand because he already showed what is it about systems approach, and FOODPath is dealing with systems approach and also research. So we need that impactful research in order to turn our food systems more sustainable for the future. And that systems approach can help us. So it's a holistic view, or it offers a holistic view. It is complex, but we need that systems thinking. So what we did, what we ask ourselves in FOODPath, in our work, is how to best support the research that we need in light of a systems approach. We need to support that research in order to maximize the impact. The better we support the research, the higher the impact can be. So that was the main challenge and the main question that we posed ourselves. What did we do? So thanks. We actually work towards transforming our funding systems We first did a mapping, so who are the funders around, where are they located, what are their priorities, and then we get into dialogue with the different actors, not only the funders, but also the other stakeholders. So we did interviews, we did several Funders Forum events, and these were a great success because you need to talk to people to understand their needs, their expectations, their barriers. So we were in touch with the public funders, also with private funders, philanthropic funders, but also the project partners and all the stakeholders that are around the funding environment. We also had a look at what's a good practice example of funding programs and calls that are available. So what can we learn from them? So we did an in-depth analysis and we established some concrete recommendations how to set up a call implying systems approach. And we also had a look at the project perspective, because the projects need to put that into reality. So how can a project have enough capacities? How can we support their capacities in line with systems approach? So what was the unique thing, or what is the unique thing is that we had really inspiring interactions. We will continue to interact with you now to co-create our future food systems and co-create the funding that we need for those. The team that we had in our work package really brought together a great diversity, and it was not only the people but their networks. So even enlarging the voices and the insights that we need. And we want to hear more. So we want to hear also what you have to bring in and share your perspectives. What is also important is that our recommendations, our insights were already taken up by Future Foods, the Partnership on Sustainable Food Systems, and the first call is ongoing. And here we could give input already to the first call so that this really is translated into practice. Well, I would like to invite you to join our dialogue, come and interact. Tomorrow we have a session and we will share some lessons about our Funders Forum events, so how to plan, design, evaluate, fund and perform research and innovation to transform our food systems. And we also have a poster. So come and have a look at the poster where we show the results of our analysis on systems approaches in transnational funding. Thank you very much.
Oh yes, actually you should stay here. The couple first speakers, I invite you to come back to the stage, please. Well, actually, just Niels before Nicola. Sorry. So Niels, if you like to come and sit. Thank you. Our next speaker is helping drive innovations across the French food industry as innovation manager at ANIA, the National Association for Food Companies. Ariane Voyetsakis supports stakeholders with funding strategies and collaborative projects. Please welcome Ariane Voyetsakis. Ariane?
Thank you, Damien. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm very pleased this afternoon to share with you our thoughts about a future knowledge hub which will connect living labs. So what have we done first with your taxis? First, the team of INRAE has done a great job mapping 55 living labs across Europe. What are living labs? Well, we have a broad definition of living labs. Those are groups of diverse actors active in research and innovation, in co-creation processes. That means they're acting on innovation, research, education, policy, networking, observatory, or citizen movement. And all this diversity of living labs are shown in a map that you can find on this link. So that was our first step in order to help living labs to know each other and then to connect. And now we are Moving to the Knowledge Hub, what is the Knowledge Hub? What are the purposes? First, to unite stakeholders, to facilitate collaboration between them, and finally, to promote innovation through these new partnerships across Europe. So we had a survey of living labs. We asked them, what are your needs? And also we had a meeting last December with you. Many of you were here. And it was like today an open meeting with stakeholders to ask them what are their needs. And from these surveys and meeting came these inputs. This knowledge hub should be a data repositories, knowing more about European projects, about training models, guides and tools, IP, regulatory and financing framework. Then it should be a place for knowledge share experience, either digital or face-to-face. It might also give food tech, scientific and market watch. As well, it would develop specific guidelines and methodology that could be a new asset offered by FOODPathS project, looking from the experience of successful living labs, what guidelines and methodology should we provide in order to replicate these successful models. And finally, we would like to foster public consultation, especially coming from the European Commission, connect with SCAR, in order to give more power to citizens, to living labs, to share their opinions with European authorities. Finally, we suggest maybe we could have, before the end of the year, a Living Lab Award in order to give recognition and visibility to nice living labs across Europe, help them again connect and scale their initiatives. So we would be very happy to have your feedbacks about this Knowledge Hub. Here you have the link to the survey. And better, please join us tomorrow in a workshop with Future Foods. We had a very interesting meeting this morning with Future Foods, who will take the continuation of this project. So tomorrow with Lorenda and from Food Drink Europe and Future Foods, we will continue thinking about the features of the Knowledge Hub. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Ariane. So our next speaker will bring global insights to food science and education. Please welcome Gabriela Versteeg, Director of EFOST, the European Federation of Food Science and Technology. Gabriela.
Thank you very much. Okay, so probably we all know that education is not only just a pillar of sustainable food system transformation, it's really an engine that drives sustainable food system transformation. We explored how the sustainable food system education is currently organized and how universities collaborate together to enforce this. Next. So we bumped into some challenges. First of all, we identified stakeholders, which each has their own educational needs. So from primary secondary schools students to industry to policymakers, and it's mainly between the educational programs and the industry that we identified the gap between what was offered and what was actually needed. We also saw that between the universities there were silos, so the universities worked in silos in the disciplines. We also found that governmental support and legislation hindered the sustainability drive in not only universities but mainly also in industry. And we found heterogeneity and slow processing of accreditation system, which really hindered the interdisciplinary transnational education collaboration. So we found it important to identify what actually was the current status and how can we increase the collaboration, how can we strengthen the collaboration between universities within Europe to come to proceed with the sustainable food system transformation. And we found that branded collaboration, as was the first initial idea of the branded network of universities, was more seen as practical, but we found it more practical to not create another formal new network, because there were already existing a lot of networks, a lot of initiatives, but to look at a more informal setting. What we did, we mapped the universities that can act as sustainable food system actors, and we developed a sustainability charter for sustainable food system education, and we also identified that there was missing a code of conduct that could be used by European higher education and research institutes. So, what's behind the name? For the network, or the network, the partnership of universities, we developed this brand, this name, thanks to UVic, the European Network for Food Sustainable Education. And this is an example of the mapping we did of the universities, not only the universities, but also, for instance, the accreditation bodies, the parks, and we mapped them to see what current activities and initiatives are there. And we worked on a draft sustainability charter. So we see that this branded network of universities can act as a sustainable food system catalyzer. Actually, we're working more towards a university partnership instead of a university branded network. And one of the USPs that this network could offer is that it aligns education, research and community engagement while respecting the diverse approach of each university. And that we combine that and build it upon the sustainability charter to guide the different universities in sustainability practices. And all is on a dynamic platform where we can where you can see which activities are there. So this is a little bit what it will look like. The framework, so the 3 different pathways is to industry, R&D and policy, supported by not only education, but also Pact for Skills and micro-credentials, so lifelong learning. And the next steps, we will also invite you to join our session tomorrow. Does it mean that I have to stop?
Welcome to stay though.
Okay, so the next steps, you maybe have time to read them before Damien takes my...
Sorry, I don't mean... Thank you, Gabriela. Also, I think there is a poster on the same topic that you can see on the way there to taking a coffee later. So, yeah, thank you. Our next puzzle piece and our next speaker connects local action to global change. Anna Bruen from ICLEI Europe supports our cities in rethinking food and nature. Please welcome Anna Bruen. Anna.
Thank you. So, okay, clicking, talking, walking. Great. We know that the partnership will be tackling the multi-crisis of biodiversity loss, climate change, and malnutrition from a post-production perspective. But we can't do this without focusing on the specific place-based and cultural needs of people and communities. And we can't look at them in isolation. So from other place-based and other cultural needs, which ultimately make up our global community and global food systems. So we only have one planet. We hope it remains viable for a very long time, for many generations. So we really need to think globally while we're acting locally, and think locally while we're acting globally. So we cannot have a food systems approach if we don't get in touch with all of the actors working in the food systems across scales. So our challenge was to ensure the future Sustainable Food Systems Partnership is inclusive and creates strong collaborations within Europe and with partners outside of Europe around the world by learning with existing networks and partnerships. So we did this. We worked to establish inclusivity into the prototype governance model and future partnership. We looked to develop meaningful synergies in our existing networks and also reaching out to networks not part of FOODPathS. We looked at mapping and liaisoning with different organizations. We looked to identify key opportunities and challenges that we were hearing from all of these different networks and partners and stakeholder groups. We also did some facilitation of workshops and mirroring activities. So what we heard from these interviews and small group discussions is that really co-design and participatory processes are key. Adopting a common working definition of what a sustainable food system or what a food systems approach is. Working in small groups and then bringing it back to a larger group is important. From our mirror group activities, which were both European and global, we heard that we really need to enable this place-based activities and embed adaptability into the funding mechanisms. From our workshops, we heard multiple communication pathways are needed, in-person, online, surveys. We have many QR codes, so I think we're around the walls today. So we're putting some of what we heard into action also in our meetings, and we really need to use accessible language. We have also developed a toolkit, and what we heard is that what inspires us moves us forward. And so we know this takes time and resources, and it's an investment. Okay, so why does any of this matter? And it's really because you matter, because we matter. We're working here in sustainable food systems. We've had over 300 points of contact in the work that we've done with people and organizations within our networks and outside of our networks. So we need to be making the space for the work that we're doing to evolve and transform and move us into the future where we want to be. A few closing remarks. In this room tomorrow at 11:15, if you're interested in discussing more about inclusivity and participatory processes and just sharing your experiences, please come, we'll be here. You can have a look at our leaflet about what we learned and what we're hearing from all of our work. I promise it's short and easy to read. And you can also browse the toolkit that is now online. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Last puzzle piece, but not the least, helping EU projects connect with people and stakeholders across Europe. Sofia Mendes designs communication strategies that make sustainable food systems more understandable and collaborative. Please welcome Sofia from the European Food Information Council.
Thank you. And before going into my communication and my presentation, I would just like to acknowledge my colleagues at EUFIC, especially Matteo, that is not here and has been the one involved in much of the work that I will be presenting here today. And I will start by stating something that may not be that obvious, but is that communication is not just a supporting activity, but it's actually a strategic piece of this partnership puzzle. And this is especially true because, especially in our landscape where we have many actors, many interests, different agendas, communication helps aligning things. And communication also helps us creating narratives and create some shared and mutual understanding. And without an effective communication, we take the risk of sounding a bit like a noisy orchestra or an unsynchronized orchestra. So yeah, communication is a powerful tool to orchestrate this interaction and mutual understanding between different actors. And in FOODPathS, we have been doing a lot of work to bring this to life, and some examples are here in this slide. So we have been developing some webinars and organizing these webinars with other networks, and these have reached more than 500 participants. We have also been quite active in events, so not only presenting the work, but also doing network. And we also use these opportunities not only to talk at people, but also to listen to people. So we really want to integrate their inputs into our next steps, to refine our next steps. And there has also been other activities such as social media campaigns. We have created some summer readings, including materials from the project, but also from other projects, and also shared some regular updates through our newsletter, but also through the Sustainable Food System Network's newsletter, and much more. We also wanted to understand the needs and expectations of the stakeholders, and for this we conducted a survey during last summer, and it seems that stakeholders value classical activities such as newsletters or participating in events, but they also propose running social media campaigns to reach broader audiences. And in the previous slide, I just gave a glimpse of the work that has been carried out in FOODPathS, and it seems that it's quite aligned with the expectations from the stakeholders, and this in itself, it's a real added value for the partnership. And so what's next? Well, it seems that we are not stopping just here, and actually today we are very excited to say that we are launching a podcast series. It's called FOODPathS, and you already have 2 episodes available, and we would really like to thank Zone MW for bringing this to life. So we really invite you to give them a listen, strolling in Brussels or when you go back home, and yeah, feel free to scan the QR code, and we are happy to continue the conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Esra, and thank you to all 6 of you. So now I'm calling back Hugo to the stage with the daunting task of putting all pieces together. How to make the Prototype Sustainable Food System Partnership puzzle. So Hugo, you have about 20 minutes, and then we'll start the Q&A session. So again, feel free to ask your questions on the Slido, also to write them down. If you didn't take the QR code earlier, it's slido.com and then #festival2025. Hugo?
Thanks a lot, and also thanks a lot to all my colleagues here for presenting all the puzzle pieces individually. So for me, the role is to try to make out of those pieces a puzzle as a whole. That is not easy, but we are going to give it a try. And Matteo said, be serious now, so I'll try to. What you have been listening to are elements that are listed here on the SRIA, on the Observatory, so about funding, about inclusivity, and also meaning thus taking care of trade-offs and co-benefit, knowledge hubs, about linking what we do in research and innovation with education, with science to policy mechanisms. Without politicians, where are we then heading to? And communication, not just as an added factor, but as something that is in the core because we speak different languages. All those parts we have tried to unite in something that you hopefully can remember for a long time. We have tried to combine that into an image of a partnership. And we have used the image of a bird. A bird is capable of looking around, observing and learning and adapting its courses based on what it's seeing, on the planetary and societal challenges that are around. Taking care of trade-offs and co-benefits with others and globally, as underlined. And also being capable of communicating internally as well as with the external world. But this bird will never fly if there are no operational activities aligned and to a goal that is established by the group of actors involved, which are part of the Governance Council. So modus operandi, even though this word is coming from criminology, if you look to it and you think, what are they doing in the food systems? We didn't have a criminal representative, at least we don't know if we have it in our consortium, but we think not. So we missed maybe some information, some key information, but we have tried to learn from criminology how you can use operational activities also in the food sector. Then modus operandi, thus for flying, but we can fly in all directions, and the food system is so broad. Thus the question is, could we not avoid reinventing the wheel? So we need to look to experience that is obtained, for example, in our knowledge hub of food system labs. We need to make use of knowledge that there is, and of course also try to stimulate the research, innovation, education that is not yet performed. And we need to make use of the tools and infrastructures that are available. We don't have the time to reinvest in everything again. We are then, even if we are a partnership, we are still just one colibri. And to make a change in our world, we need to have a flock of birds that jointly is capable of changing our courses. So we need to form cooperations with other partnerships, otherwise we will not make it. So therefore, this image of a flock of birds has been our basis of a narrative. But then the question, of course, comes, if you like to connect all those puzzle pieces, you need to have a narrative that is shared, and you need to have also a kind of list of instructions that others can follow, and that can help them in setting up their partnerships or being involved in their own, more actively involved in their own partnerships. So there are two elements in this manual that are crucial. The first is narrative. This bird poses the question, where do I need to fly to? Do I need to fly to the left or to the right? Do I need to fly to the left or to the right? Do I need to fly to a world which looks like, on the top left, unchecked consumption, a dead planet? Or on the top right, where everybody is connected, respects each other, open source sustainability? Does it need to fly in a direction where you have some wonderful green islands, sovereignty is put up front and forgetting the others? Or if it is just focusing on a few, the survival of the richest on the lowest left? This image is not from us, it's from the World Economic Forum and already prepared in 2017, but it is so relevant still today. And even if you read all the newspapers and listen to everything, and I'm very much convinced that after this session the context will be painted by other speakers, they will come back to those elements. Where is this bird flying to? That's a crucial question before you even start to read a manual. And partly the answer is in this. I think that our partners in FOODPathS have shown that there are very good examples that we can follow and that this bird can follow. So there are a lot of sustainability-oriented partnerships or food systems already put in place. Even though, as Neil said, do we know what a food system is? It's not bound by our boundaries at a national level or by our cities, etc. Those are political, historical constructs. Food systems, maybe in the very, very, very long history, were well known when they started with agriculture. But today, the boundaries are not known anymore. So we need to reinvent those boundaries, but the people are doing it by themselves in their own examples. And the second point is, of course, if you have those examples, are you capable of increasing your performance that you are even flying in a better direction and also stimulate others to do it as well? Because if you start to fly, you're going to change the landscape around you, and the landscape is influencing yourself. I think Escher, as a very famous drawer, he depicted this in a fantastic way. It's on the right. So FOODPathS' narrative, in short, could be something like, we like to reach sustainable outcomes. Then growth, as I've said in the introduction, is no option, because then we end up in chaos. At least that's laid down in basic laws. But degrowth, if you are going to tell your children that, I've been growing up in growth and you will start now the degrowth, I know what their answer will be. Goodbye, Daddy. And they are right. Degrowth in itself is a frustrating theme for a narrative. But if you use another kind of expression where you say, okay, we have planetary limits, we have societal boundaries. If you try to play the best games that you can imagine, then you can also try to found for all of you an outcome for food systems that is respectable and also provides you food, of course, everywhere and for everybody at any time. So this could be a part of a narrative that holds for all and is co-constructed with our children. Why do we use here playing in this game, in this way with games? Because in a narrative, a game is something that all people know. At least I don't want to ask you personally, but I presume that all of you has been playing in your life. I don't want to ask what you have been playing, that's up to you, of course. But I think you all know with playing games that there are rules, that there are a playing field, that there are players, that you can make moves with pieces, that there is the time, and that you can win or eventually, of course, also lose. So a game structure is well known. You can depict any food system or any grouped activity in the form of a game structure. And that is what we did with all the cases that we studied. Not because we wanted to have it immediately ready for our children, but because we wanted to learn from it and we like to extract lessons that we can use in other parts. So we made a template and all of them are described in a similar way. This is understandable for a philanthropic organization, for a city, for a researcher, etc. So we have here defined a common methodology that hopefully is of use for you in your own context. Then you can say food systems are easy, because we know we already do it for thousands of years, we produce food. But still, there are going a lot of things wrong today. And I should have taken Mbappé, because I live now in France. But I took Johan Cruyff, he was a famous Dutch football player, and he said football is easy, but the most difficult is to play easy football. And the second one, which is also highly relevant for us, football is a game of errors. Who make the most loses, who make the least wins, and it is as simple as this, he stated. This is exactly the lessons that we can take also for our food systems. Apparently, we have been making mistakes and we are ending up today where we are over-exploiting our planet with a factor of 1.7. In August, we already used the resource of our planet. That's impossible to keep. So we need to change that. And I think to play food systems in a simple way, I think we need to listen to those lessons. He also taught us 3 other things. If you like to play those games, you need to have talent and also complementary talent. You need to have concentration and you need to be focused on an objective. And you need to be willing to perform as best as possible as a team. And I think that is what we need to do in food systems, also if we now still can change our courses. This is the story that is at the basis of our manual. So all our instructions and everything that has been said is put in this perspective. I hope that what my colleagues all have said, that is going to work for you as well in your partnerships, in your activities. So the manual in the second part provide then the instructions about how to, for example, fund your research or how to build an observatory. It's each time a short introduction with the followed process and the lessons that we have learned. You need to give feedback, because even if we had a wonderful consortium, we have made mistakes. We have made or designed outcomes that are maybe not practical. So you need to give feedbacks on that. We have concluding remarks and we have critical success points in all of those steps. There are 2 topics which are briefly addressed by Anna, but which were not fully described. So I like to include them also in this presentation, because they are crucial for this bird to fly. The first is the modus operandi coming from criminology. And I didn't speak recently with criminals, so I didn't update my information, but I hope you will believe me that I was well informed by my colleagues from INRAE Transfer, who has an enormous experience in operational activities in very different consortia. Modus operandi is the framework that guides how partnerships execute tasks and manages interactions to achieve outcomes. That is what the modus operandi is and the way we have used it. And why does it matter? Because we need to align our activities to reach strategic goals. So they call it very modestly the backbone of a partnership. And of course, this is a very modest thing. I have 5 minutes left, it's enormous. What are then the practical features of such a modus operandi? You know them all. There is nothing new. If you have been once active in a project or in any activity where you like to reach a goal, you always have been dealing with communication processes, financial and contractual management, and so on. But there is one specific issue if you look to partnerships that needs to be as inclusive as possible. If you want to have a partnership, and that was asked in the beginning to us by the Commission, make an inclusive partnership. If we should have done this with the 273 million Europeans, and they should all have a say into it and only have 2 remarks to make, then we have 2 to this 740 million, in short, options. And if you listen to them only 1 microsecond, that means that we needed time to listen to them all and include them all into something that is convenient, that is 10 to the more or less 223 seconds. Now, for those who are a little bit mathematicians, they know that is far, far longer than the lifetime of our planet. So it's impossible. You cannot create inclusive partnership. If somebody says, you have built an inclusive partnership, don't believe this person. But what you can do is try to have representatives of those organizations. And that is what we have been trying to do. And working with different groups and try then to see what are the modus operandi elements of all of those. And then you come at issues that are dealing with conflicts of interest and transparency, patents. In the past, if you are working in a lab on a technology, you can say, I'm the inventor. But now you work in a food system where everything is connected. That is nearly impossible to define in patent strategies. So those elements are becoming now extremely important in partnerships and should be at the forefront. But that is also what my colleagues from INRAE Transfer said. And they have put it into a practical way of presenting what are then guiding principles, what are activities, and what are recommendations that follow out of this. So operational issues for partnerships of diverse actors. Tomorrow, there is an opportunity to give feedback on this and other input. This has been tested with all our different partners. There is another element, governance is already mentioned, and inclusivity also, but there was something that was striking in what we found, also what we found in literature. There is already governance is as old as first groupings of people. But what we have seen in food systems, there was not really a definition if you like to have a grouping that is focused on a sustainable outcome. And second, what is a governance model that you can use? If you look to a governance architecture of any partnership on agroecology, on water for all, on sustainable food system, on PRIMA for the Mediterranean, on circular bio-based Europe, you will see they all follow nearly the same structure. But where is it based on? So we have been asking ourselves this question, and in fact it's based on 4 different elements. The first is a partnership is always based on interaction, strong or weak or etc. Very easy. The second is much more complicated. This gives the largest tensions in a partnership. It's about control and power balances in partnerships. But Michael Porter, he was a professor at Harvard University already at cluster theories. He explained to us that if you look to any grouping, you always need to respect the core business of a single actor, its capacity to adapt, its capacity to align forces with other, cooperate and also compete sometimes, and its need for appreciation of the wider environment. So those 4 elements you need to take into account. I was trained as a very basic physicist. I didn't know more than water. But this is exactly the same what I've learned in physics. It's a unification theory. Now, we could not invite Einstein, so we skipped this topic for the rest. What is important, at least, is what we have learned. If those 4 forces are not, or 4 interactions are not in balance, any partnership will not function, and there will always be tensions about power balances. And the last 2 elements are for the legal scholars and for the politicians. And there are some in the audience, I know. It's all about contracts, but contracts also of multi-actors. And what we have seen with Daniel Rossi and Confa Agricultura, with a policy game, all those laws and regulations and rules, they can be very counterproductive one towards the other. We did a policy game on that, and it's a fascinating outcome. So how to deal with those formal and informal rules and very complex partnerships. And then, of course, orchestration, what we discussed. And we came up with a general structure. You can read about it if you like, but it may help you in structuring your own governance model and your own governance architecture. And that is what we did. We worked with this, with our very different actors, and philanthropic organizations really look to governance in a completely different way as the industry, for example. So we have been looking to all those elements. I need to finish my presentation, and that suits me well because I'm at the end. This architecture will be discussed tomorrow. This came out of what we did. And hopefully we have taken into account the elements of inclusivity, as Anna underlined. Hopefully we have also taken care that power balances are well established in those kind of partnerships. And even we have been trying to imagine, suppose that the European investment banks should support not only technologies, because that is a straightforward process if you look to return on investments, but if you need to finance organizational innovations, how could you do that in the best possible way? So maybe we have some suggestions also for future discussions in this direction. We hope that all those lessons help us and help us to go forward. The Armada of Nicolas, of course, was a much nicer image in terms of a boat that is pushing other boats. But I think already the expression that a boat can float if we have the right forces behind it, I think that is also for our partnership and for Future Foods, our big brother, I think a very important message and learning what we have seen in the last few days. I hope the manual will help you, but it will only help you if you have a critical look, comments, feedback, and adapt it to your own situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugo. Thank you, everyone. So now is the time for questions. So we will now take questions from the Slido on the FOODPathS prototype to any and all of our 7 speakers on the stage. You can again go to the Slido feed here to ask your questions. And sorry about the nice weather today in Brussels, because those in the sun are getting sunburned soon. So after this questions session, you can come back and sit in the shadow also if you like. All right, so I'll give now the floor to Maureen, our colleague in the back, who is taking the Slido questions, and we will also take questions from the audience here in the room. So raise your hand, and a colleague from the back, I see Deborah here, will come and give you the microphone. Maybe Maureen for the few first questions.
Yes, so we had a few more interesting questions. The first one will be for Nicolas. In your analysis of calls, did you learn anything about calls focused on the organic sector or research in organics?
Can you repeat?
Sorry. In your analysis of calls, did you learn anything about calls focused on the organic sectors or research in organics?
Organic. Yes. Well, yes, I'm sitting next to Niels, so I don't want to get hurt. Yes, we had a look at several calls. So when you come to our poster, we can also show you, we looked at 21 different calls. And we also looked at not only food calls that focused only on like food, but also a little bit beyond different sectors. So we also looked at calls that focused on organic, also focused on health, or also focused on urban systems, for example. So that was also included, yes.
Okay, we have another question for Ariane. Is the Knowledge Hub mapping the food system labs already up and running?
The map is already running. As you mentioned, you have the website. You can see the map we have done. But of course, it's open for new living labs. And for that, we've worked with national food platforms, which are national networks of technology in food tech. And so please, if you are a living lab wishing to join this network, contact your national technology platform. And the knowledge hub is on thought, so we'll have tomorrow a workshop, and we had this morning a very interesting discussion with Future Foods. So the knowledge hub is a project ongoing.
Okay, so we stay with you, Ariane, with another question for you. So what striking example in the Living Labs network did you come across regarding social and governance innovation that could serve as example for future food, and beyond?
We have also in Future Foods living labs coming from cities. I think we have an example in Italy when these living labs are close to citizens in order to give power to nice initiatives in the cities regarding food tech and food transition. And yes, this is also a part of our mapping. I don't know if somebody in the room wants to comment. There are some people coming from living labs in the cities, I think. No? Okay.
Okay, so we have other questions still here. One is for Gabriela. Has the university in the networks focusing on all aspects of sustainable food systems? So not only the technological innovation aspect, but even more important social governance innovation. So what did you find in the mapping?
The mapping we did is we looked at the education of the various higher education research institutes and compared them to the also to the how it's called the ranking. Sorry, 3 ranking systems for sustainability. But so in the end, we ended up with a list of universities that we found are most mentioned in the ranking systems, and we could find them in combination with joint partnerships with joint education systems. And then actually we decided that we would like to focus more on identifying if there's a sustainability charter that is applied or used by the universities. So we send out a survey to the universities to ask them how they organize currently their sustainability guidelines, also in their interaction with the stakeholders, but also their curricula and their operations at the university itself. And based on these outcomes, we included that in the mapping. And in follow-up discussions, actually, we found out that the value of the mapping or of the network is more into having insights in what is already there, and so which education is focusing on which part and who has food system thinking included, and to bind that by commitment to a sustainability charter on European level. I don't know if that answers the question. It was a long answer, but...
Is there any question from the audience? We can take a few also. Yes. The microphone is coming also for participants online. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Nasser Ehani from Leibniz Institute, ATB. My question is to all, whoever wants to answer. We are talking about the sustainable food systems, but what should be the core scale that we are talking? I've heard about the place-based approach, local to global. But now in times of polycrisis, the tariffs, all other geopolitical tensions, how do you see this food security versus food sufficiency, especially at the regional scale?
Who wants to take it? Anna, maybe? And then Niels.
Niels also leaned forward. So I think what we heard and what we learned in the work in FOODPathS is how connected it all is, right? So I think that's the point with how do we fund and empower the place-based responses to where people are living without ignoring or maybe let me say it like this, at the same time including the global scale, right? So self-sufficiency and food security happens small scale, but we're also connected now than if you are only focusing on, it was like the diagram that that Hugo had up. If you're only focusing at the local and regional scale, you create many islands. But we're so interconnected, we have to look at then the logistics, right? If we're talking about a partnership that is post-production, what are the logistics from getting products from one place to another? And you can't just focus on the local and regional anymore. You have to make the connection to where is the food being produced, how much do you reduce so that you're eating locally or regionally, but it's never going to be completely local or regional. So we need these global connectivities to answer the realities that we're living in, right? So it's important that then you have actors coming together who are working in different places and having them talk about oftentimes very similar experiences in our mirror groups with the folks working in Costa Rica and the folks working in Africa and the folks working with Europe, addressing very similar questions and challenges and concerns in their areas. But then there are some places, especially policy, like you mentioned, where maybe there's some adjustments that can be made or learnings that can be shared. So this is what we were hearing through our work in FOODPathS.
So that's why also maybe a systems approach is important. Niels? You go after.
Well, actually, thanks for saying this, because I agree with you. I mean, there's kind of an idealistic approach to this and a very realistic approach to this. And I strongly believe in the old saying of think globally and act locally. But I agree with you that well, I wouldn't call it a romanticism, but there is quite a lot of talk of local food systems. And I strongly believe that they are good because they can activate, they can experiment, and then can activate citizens and get them an understanding. But it won't really change a lot because of the logistics, because of the scales. I mean, few people realize on their daily plate how much distance, how much productivity, professionalism in all stages of that food system across a wide geographical scale that involves. And that's really where we realistically need to approach also. And then from a realistic point of view, I would say, speaking in Brussels and that it is really necessary to look at a European scale, because the division of specialities and products produced and so on is really high across Europe, and there's a huge culture behind it and a lot of companies and professionalism. So I think that's, and we are an organization called the European Union plus some other countries. We need to do something, but we shouldn't forget the idealism that, and I've worked personally with farmers in Asia, in East Africa, in Latin America, that are connected through value chains, organic and conventional. And I know how many people out there are depending on food products from Europe, Northern Africa, for some products, but also depending on selling products to us. And we can't make a closed European food system and just think of the others as import-export statistics. So there is something more. But realistically, I truly think we need to define our European food system and subsystems and learn more and better how to what extent should we still keep them connected, and to what extent should we support the growing nationalism and regionalism. And I think final comment, climate change and the need for adaptation will give us a lot of pressure to think in both terms. Strengthening regional approaches for resilience, but also strengthening and utilizing the different geopolitical or geobiological regions across Europe that gives us different opportunities we need to continuously use.
I completely agree. The level of European policy must address this question, and it definitely must be on the European level. For instance, in Europe we import soya for feed, and we are very dependent on proteins, so we need to enforce pulses cultures in farming. We need to find alternatives to soya, which destroys tropical forests and contributes to climate change. So that only this question can only be addressed on the European agriculture policy, and that's also the added value of FOODPath to bring you all together today to have these thoughts, and especially now with the threat of economic retaliations from the USA, we must have a united answer and to build this European food system.
Hugo.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this highly exciting question. If you should have known the answer, I think we should not be even here today. But I'm also happy with the responses. If I look to it, the example of this musical orchestra is, I think, a very important one. We have been long time considering that the problems that that arise somewhere, we can transport them somewhere else. But that is over. This idea. So we are with one planet. So we not only need to have a European approach, yes, we need to have a European approach, but the UN Food System Summit showed us we also need to have a global approach. This 1.7 times that we use our planet means that we are somewhere over-exploiting our planet's capacities, and this is a global issue. Climate change is a global issue. If for that our Gulf streams are stopping, and Leibniz Institute together with Utrecht University and several others has shown that the risk on an ice age is increasing rapidly. So these are issues that, and for a part, the food system is an absorber of the problems, and a part it is the responsible of it. But this is all discussed from a global context, and that is what we definitely need to continue to do, and much more intensively. But other issues, you cannot, I think, again, think about the transportation of your problems towards others. So you need to think also therefore logically and try to find the solutions logically. Otherwise the overall outcome of what we are doing definitely will disturb all. If I see it at the European level, the Joint Research Centers published, but it was withdrawn within one day, a report on that there is a possible, now not loss, there will be maybe 60% of our resources needed in 2060 for what we consume, what we use for clothing, transport, etc. Renewable resources. If we lose 60%, if there is a 60% loss, that's impossible. That's a European question, and that needs to be addressed European-wide. Now, if I take it as from a very scientific point of view, and then I'll stop, otherwise Damien will become angry. You can say this is an unsolvable question because those issues are too complex to deal with. But think about ourselves. We are a body, a human being, who is extremely complex also. We have about 100,000 genes. They are grouped. They are grouped in substructures. And they are grouped in substructures in blood cells, in liver cells, and so on. And the square root of the number of genes is the number of different cell types. And they all together work together to let us function. Of course, it isn't perfect. Sometimes a virus is also attacking us and we cannot counteract it. But overall, complex systems has a way of organizing themselves in such a way that they are overall capable of surviving, and each individual subsystem as well. I think we need to go in food systems to such a kind of analogy. In complex systems that are adaptive, you see it in living species, in ecosystems, often you see those kind of trends, and we don't have them at all in the food system. And I think we need to strive for that, but that's a very scientific question. The most famous institute in the world on complex systems is in Santa Fe. They don't consider the agri-food sector. And that is what we definitely need to do, and as fast as possible.
Thank you. So yes, similar to a living organism, we have stimuli here in the room from inside and then from outside also. Let's go back maybe to the Slido. I hear that there are many questions online. Maureen?
Yes, there are many questions. Thank you, everybody, for this. This is really interesting. We will try to answer to it as much as possible. So we're staying with Hugo. 2 different questions in one. How to bring the food system governance into reality, how to make it work. Then the second one is future foods, building on the overall approach, progressing the outcome of the FOODPathS, or other initiatives are willing to use FOODPathS solutions.
Yeah, man has a problem. Man can do always one thing at a time. So 2 questions to deal with is for me always too complex. But I give it a try. The first question is I'll start with the second question. What is Future Foods? That is the big partnership who started in June last year. Claude is here. She is the coordinator of Future Foods. How can it make use of FOODPathS outcomes? The deliverable, everything is published in the open, and we have luckily many workshops together where we exchange, because they have another consortium, they have other wishes, they have other also demands from their funders and so on, but we try to exchange information as well as possible. And I think Ariane gave a very good example in the Observatory. It's the same for funding. Nicola also did it. So it's an exchange of information. Are others using it? Yes, we were so happy that in our advisory board there are coordinators of other partnerships, agroecology and water for all, circular bio-based Europe, Prima for the Mediterranean. And they even say that what we did was useful. I don't know if they wanted to be nice to us or that it is really used, but I've learned that for Prima 2, specific elements are now taken into account. And in fact, for us, it's only a very good sign. Whatever is used, whatever learning lessons we have learned, all the people who want to use it, with big initiatives, partnerships, etc., please come back to us and tell us if you use it, or maybe we did it not right, so maybe we can discuss how to do it better. So I'm very happy that it is hopefully of use for many. Then the first question, I need to take it back, Maureen.
Yes, it was really, really simple question. How to bring the food system governance into reality and how to make it work?
Yeah, then I can... Easy. Yeah, always those simple questions. That puts me in a big problem, because now I need to give a simple answer also. Yeah?
You can try.
Let's give it a try. The answer is come tomorrow to the session, because it is exactly there where we are going to discuss it. We have discussed and we have presented the principles. Those are published. So those are also reviewed by others, of use or not, but at least it's open. We have tried with our consortium to translate it into an architecture that we think helps partnerships who wants to be inclusive with philanthropic organizations, city networks, and so on. This architecture is discussed tomorrow and will be published as well. But what we don't know is if others are of need of other issues, then please come to us and tell us. Maybe what we here produce does not work. We don't even know if it works in all parts of food system. We don't even know if it works in other sectors. So please come to us for those who are interested, and let's discuss it and see if it works. And we can always organize a workshop for that.
Yes, a few more questions from the Slido. If you would like to ask a question directly in the audience, please raise your hand, or when I look at you, make eye contact. Maureen, and then Yasmina in the room. Maureen, if you have...
yes. If you can let me also the conclusive question. So we have a question for Hannah about inclusiveness. You mentioned that funding mechanisms need adaptability. How can we together overcome this?
How can the funding mechanisms include adaptability? So this was suggestions from the workshops and mirror groups we had, where recognizing that different recipients of the funding operate at different scales, or you have different sizes of organizations. So who are you targeting? Who are you making funding available to? What kind of administrative regulations do you put in place? Is that accessible for different sizes of organizations, so medium, small, or only larger organizations? The other comment specifically related to that we talked a lot about in our mirroring group and workshop activities were this, the timeline for a project, right? So if we're looking at a food systems approach to transformation, how do you then incorporate the possibility to learn from the work that you're doing? So 1, 2, 3 years is not so long if then you learn something and then want to apply it. So is there a possibility for longer term funding of projects? 5 years is pretty common with Horizon projects. Of course, then, is there a possibility to go even longer, or what would that look like? How do you set up review processes that would enable the continuation of that? People reflecting on, and we probably know that it takes a while and an investment of time and resources to work with the people that you set up a consortium with. And then if you really want to have impact, and we want to fund for impact, can you extend that? What would that look like, considering the different actors and the different lessons and outcomes? So those are some ways that adaptability came up in the conversations that we had specifically around expanding the partnership's reach to a variety of networks and coalitions.
Thank you. Nicola, do you want to comment on that also? Funding and adaptability? Surprise question. Sorry.
No, not really. No, but it's always good to be open and to think about what would be the ideal. And then you always start, when you start to implement it, then reality crosses. And there's a lot of limitations. But I think, nevertheless, it's important to always see what would be the need and how would we ideally change maybe also funding schemes. So I think this is crucial, and then we need to have also a long-term perspective for the change itself. And that is where we need to have also resilience in ourselves, in our work, that we keep on trying, keep on working on changing the established schemes that we have. And that might take quite a long time. So therefore, of course, the project can take longer. Maybe we need different phases of projects, but then we also need to see, maybe we need to think in decades then, rather than in years. And that makes it a little bit, I want to achieve something now, yesterday, but it's not working. So we need to consider that, but yeah, let's dream on.
Thank you. Looking at the time, so maybe one last question, probably from Yasmina.
There's others. Okay.
You have the mic. So.
Okay. Well, it's not really a question, but it's more something to motivate this group, because I really enjoyed the discussion on food systems and subsystems and the local and global. And I was at the Vision for Agriculture and Food conference organized by DGRTD last week. And there was a word cloud when we came in. What do you find missing in the vision? And what stood out was the word food. So I really would like to motivate you to bring these messages to that platform, because I think what FOODPathS has to say and what came out is really relevant for this whole vision process that they are now in. So that would be my recommendation.
Thanks. Perfect for the close this Q&A session. Let's give one round of applause for all our speakers in this marathon session. So you are you're very close now to drinking and food, which is also what this festival is about. But before you go, so we'll meet again at 4 here. But you're about to find out that we actually need you, and this festival will also be a succession of challenges. So when you go to the coffee break, 3 things. 1, look for the puzzle piece on your badge, and meet and talk with the ones that have a similar puzzle piece as you. 2, relax with the FOODPathS quiz. So if you want to test just how knowledgeable you are about food systems, we have this quiz for you. You're welcome to scan the QR code, and there are a few. I'm sure the QR code is also on the walls around here. So this is one more activity for you. I'm not sure if there is a prize at the end, but you never know. So. And then finally, when you're having a coffee, we keep talking about QR codes. We are surrounded by them, so feel free to take a look. And we have lots of nice activities for you with the QR codes. So I think we're good. On to the coffee break, and see you again at 4.
E. Two, E, 1, 2, 2. A1, 2, 2, A1, 2. E. E. E, C, 1, 2, 2. 2, A, 1, 2. A1, 2, 2, 2, A1, 2, 2, C, E, yes. A1, 2, C, E. A1, 2, 2. A1, 2, 2, A1, 2, 2. A1, 2, 2, E, ça, A1, 2, 2. Two. A, 1, 2. A, C. E.
Buckets? No, this system. Yeah, it works, right? Doesn't it? So.
Okay, so we will start now our next session, the framework around the Sustainable Food System Partnership Prototype into a context. So this session, we will invite 4 speakers to the stage, and this time, so we still have, you're still welcome to ask questions, and we'll have a questions and answers session. But this time we'll do this Q&A session after each speaker has done their speech. So without further ado, I will directly introduce our first speaker. Caroline De Gruyter brings over 2 decades of sharp underground reporting in European politics as a Europe correspondent for NRC and contributor to outlets like the Foreign Policy and EU Observer. She explores the complexity and fragility of European cooperation. Please welcome Caroline De Gruyter, journalist.
Thank you. I come with the box, a little box. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Yes. Even in the back in the sun there. Thanks for having me this afternoon. When I was asked to come here and talk to you, I said, but I know nothing about food. You know, I'm a happy consumer, and that's about it. But then I was told, look, we'd like you to talk about the bigger context. And I understand why now. You've all been talking about armadas and birds flying, you know, flocks of birds, and big ships sailing all over the world, and connection. But there's some trouble, of course, in the wider world. And I was asked to discuss the wider world, so the context in which we operate, geopolitical context, and Europe's place in it, because it already came up in the last few questions and answers, because that's a challenge now for us. So the world, I can be brief about that, everybody knows the world is in turmoil, in total turmoil. We have a trade war, we have a war in Ukraine, which affects us, greatly affects us, also in food supply, by the way. We had an intelligence report in the Netherlands, the country where I'm from, just 2 weeks ago, saying rather bluntly that in Europe we're already in a gray zone between war and peace, with hybrid attacks on ministries, on public infrastructure, on, you know, my newspaper was just down for 48 hours. Nobody could access the website. All these are attacks that are happening every day, and I'm not talking about all the other stuff going on. Meanwhile, the United States is almost blowing up the World Health Organization and wants to undo most of the international system, a rules-based system, that the US itself set up after the Second World War. And oh yes, the US also hates the EU nowadays. So it's not just a turbulent world. It's not just the fact that it is not business as usual at the moment. It's revolutionary. So the question, what Europe should do, is acute. Let me take a few steps back first. I'm very afraid of the woman on the first row, by the way. Before you know it, she's sitting there, 5 minutes, oula. But I have a bit more. But I see you're there. So a few steps back first. A little over 100 years ago, there was a French philosopher and poet called Paul Valéry, who wrote a little essay called La crise de l'esprit. And he said European powers are ruling the world. They're totally dominant. Whatever they decide is happening all over the world. But can we keep it up? Can we keep it up? We don't have enough people. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough territory. So others at some point will take over. Well said, no? Today it is the reverse. Europe is not dominating the world anymore. The world is dominating Europe. And it is determining, alas, what we do, what we must do. What happened 100 years ago is that European powers were so strong that they were rivaling each other. They didn't need each other. They didn't need to cooperate. They just went and conquered a lot more colonies just to put each other down. And of course, this ended in the First World War. The race became too fierce and they started fighting. First World War. It wasn't enough, so then came the Second World War. After 1945, London and Paris were not anymore, and even Vienna, were not anymore the dominant capitals in the world. It was Washington and Moscow. Europe hardly noticed this. It knew it was shrinking. Its significance in the world was shrinking. But the blow was softened because America did our geopolitics. We could rebuild our economies, we could build our welfare states, and in general try to become better people, thanks to the American security umbrella. We were, as I called it, children of fortune in Europe. Now, the United States is withdrawing. I don't think they will leave Europe altogether, because they need us to project their power in the world. And they need NATO as well. But the international rules-based system in which Europe has thrived so much is not to America's liking anymore. They think it made China big and powerful. And they don't manage to put China down via the international system, like they managed to put Japan down in the 1990s. So now they want to undo the international system, or most parts of it, the parts that they don't like. And Europe can defend itself, largely. That's the message. What Trump wants to do with Europe, and not just Trump, but especially the ideologues behind him, is to vassalize Europe. So he keeps NATO as a vehicle to project American power, but within NATO, the rules are different, are going to be different. Everything is going to be on America's terms, and we see this now. I don't need to go into details. If we don't watch out in Europe, we will become a protectorate, at best. So, for Europe, it is really what is happening now in the world is a sea change. But there are, of course, silver linings, and I'm going to talk about those too, because it's also a chance for us. So, Europe is in the process of provincialization, global provincialization. We're becoming a province. The German economy is tanking, and even the French army, once the strongest in Europe, is kicked out of one African country after another. The world is divided into blocks, and these blocks, huge blocks, and they rival each other on energy, on raw materials, on food, on everything. If I don't take it, somebody else will take it. This is the thinking. So body mass counts. And now, the European countries, the member states, have always told their people, if we do something together in Europe, it costs us sovereignty. We give away national sovereignty. We give it to Brussels. We lose something. In a way, it hurts and it's negative. That's the story very often. But suddenly, in this world, with such huge challenges that no single member state can handle on their own, they start to realize that actually you give sovereignty or you share it, but you also get sovereignty back in the shape of common action and, you know, the ability to find solutions together. So there we come to the flock of birds and the armadas. So 100 years ago, there was no need for European countries to cooperate, to work together. Now, cooperation is imperative. Even Viktor Orban realizes it, who spends, you know, every day from early morning till late at night comparing Brussels to Moscow under the Soviets, saying that Brussels is a monster and it's a dictatorship and so on, but he doesn't want to leave because he takes much more out of it than he puts in there. Citizens feel this too. Some of you have probably seen the latest Eurobarometer, which since 1983 asks citizens in the member states one and the same question. Is EU membership good for your country? 20 years ago, in the mid-2000s, 52% said yes, which is not a lot actually. And most people, most of the remaining 48% said, don't know. They didn't really care, I guess. Now it is 74%. It's the highest ever. So I don't think they're still very happy with the EU, with the way things function. But they're certainly more happy than before to be in it. In Norway, which is not a member, there are talks about, you know, having a referendum on membership again. Same in Iceland. I ran into a high official from Armenia, and he says they're discussing it too. Everybody is moving a little bit more to the middle, to the center, to huddle together. And governments are asking for more Europe. The deeper the crisis is, the bigger the challenge, the more they work together. I think cohesion, some people are trying to frame Europe's story as a story of fragmentation today. I see fragmentation too. But I think cohesion today is much stronger. We have the pandemic, and we get common vaccines. We get Eurobonds to finance frailing economies. Now, with Putin and with Trump, suddenly, for the first time since the 1950s, European countries and also European non-EU countries are working together on European defense. Is it easy? No. Everybody wants something else, but they do it. So the movement is in the right direction. The EU, 5 minutes, thank you. The EU was a lawmaking machine for a long time. And you all know more about this than I do. A lawmaking machine is not very charming. You know, citizens, they don't feel much of an attachment with that. So I think most of the PhDs on Europe have been written about the democratic deficit, about the distance between the citizen and Brussels. Nowadays, Europe is still a lawmaking machine, but it's also becoming a service provider. Member states want vaccines, they get them. Member states have an energy crisis, okay, the Commission, they ask the Commission, get us more energy, and the Commission does it. Even animal fodder had to be arranged hastily when the war in Ukraine broke out. Border problems, we get more Frontex. So it is, you know, it is becoming a service provider. It is discussing issues that many citizens have an opinion about. European defense. Do we need a European army? The rule of law. What are we going to do with countries like Hungary? You know, it is suddenly, it's much clearer for citizens what the EU is about. In the days that the EU was still mainly about, not mainly, but visibly, on dealing with chemical directives and fishing quota, it was much harder to connect for ordinary citizens with what Europe is doing than now. So, we live in a different Europe. We used to be open, and now security is issue number one. We used to be super technical, to take the political angle out. Now we're becoming more political. We used to be interdependent with many other regions in the world. We've seen all the beautiful, you know, I don't have slides, but all the other slides were emphasizing, you know, the interconnectedness. Now we need to become more autonomous in Europe, and that also concerns food, of course. We used to be floating, not taking a lot of initiatives, you know. Now we need to take responsibility for our own continent, for our own values. We have, if Europe doesn't keep up the international system, no one else will do it. So we do need partnerships, but not with just anybody and their grandmother. It really has, it's not partnerships in order to keep everything afloat. It is partnerships to strengthen this system. So we have much more of a political goal there. To close off, I think it's 17 minutes now. The other day I was reading an article about Dutch history. And why did the Dutch provinces, who have always been fiercely different and independent and stubborn, how on earth did they ever get together to kick the Spaniards out? They had to. I've lived in Switzerland. I know that the Canton de Genève has different holidays and a different foreign policy and trade policy than the Canton de Vaud, which is bordering it. I mean, and then you wonder, how did these stubborn cantons ever get into one country, one republic, in order to kick out the Habsburgs? Aristotle once said that an external threat unites the worst rivals. And in this sense, I think we're back with Paul Valéry. And the current turbulence, international turbulence, is my fierce conviction, finally, again, gives Europe a sense of purpose. What the food component of that is, I leave that to you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Caroline. So now we have a few minutes for questions. If there is any question in the room, please raise your hand. And otherwise, yes, one here from Niels. Let me the microphone to you. And then we'll take a few also from online. Please.
Thank you. Thanks. Very inspiring presentation. And it's a bit unfair to ask because you have said you're not a specialist in food systems anyway. But trying to learn from what you said, you are trying to make an analogy. You presented how outside pressure and the current grand political situation pressures and at trans-European collaboration. So if we try to think about then our food systems, where it has been considered, you know, as you said, people also governments have been very skeptical of an EU law on food, on an EU, any attempt except for the EFSA regulation of food safety has been really opposed. But thinking of what we talked about this morning also, the challenges our food systems will face from not only wars, but climate change and competition for land and so on. Do you think there is actually, on a general space or a general setting, a movement towards a recognition that Europe needs to see resource use and procurement of food, for example, just like energy, in a trans-European perspective and kind of toning down these national pride things that we are very good at producing this and that? And
I remember, I mean, I don't have a detailed answer, of course, I'll be frank. But one thing, you know, I said everything is about security today. You know, 10 years ago, I also lived in Brussels for a couple of years. Everything was about money. And now it's still about money, of course, but there is a big source of security over everything. One of the things is food. I remember when the war in Ukraine broke out, the next day, cattle farmers in Spain started jumping up and down. And not only in Spain, but they were the loudest, apparently, or that just caught my eye. Because they got all their fodder from Ukraine. And so the next day, the ministers of agriculture met, I think via Zoom, because it has to be done, you know, hastily, and asked the Commission, tasked the Commission to bloody get fodder from n'importe où, you know, no matter where it comes from. So I think this is a very good example. I think the vaccines are also an example, which used to go in and out of Europe for bottling and for this and that, and nobody had a clue, like how all these, it was beautiful, it was all, you know, flocking around and so on, but nobody had oversight. I think we need oversight and to see where our vulnerable points are. And if there's too much vulnerability, because our openness, and not just for food, but also media, for instance, and infrastructure, our openness is used by adversaries who want to put Europe down, undermine it, or even destroy it, and they enter via these open points. So we need to be more resilient, and that goes for food as well. I've never heard these cattle farmers anymore, so I presume, you know, the ministers or the Commission managed. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take one more question, quick question from Ariane, and then we'll move on to our next talk.
Thank you for your very interesting presentation. Indeed, we need more Europe, but on the same time, in the European Parliament, we never have so many anti-European parties. How we deal with this contradiction? We see, for instance, the attacks to the Green Deal now.
Yes. I mean, there's a very big irony in the Parliament, because we have more Europe, but it's also a different Europe. Europe is now dealing with such sensitive issues and big issues that member states never wanted, you know, always wanted to keep national, like defense and health and so on. And now they have no other way but doing it together. So they do it together. Luckily, that's our luck, that they understand how small they are and that they need to be together. However, they don't hand it over to Europe. They take those subjects to Brussels and keep them, in a way, intergovernmental. Parliament is totally excluded. All these, Parliament is even now going to court. It's going to sue the member states because the member states have drawn up a big rearming program. And I don't think many people dispute the fact that, we're behind and we have disinvested in this for 20 years and now we need to catch up. But they can't stand the fact that the member states decide on this by themselves without even consulting the parliament. So on the one hand, there's a lot of far-right people coming into the parliament, although we shouldn't exaggerate it either. The middle held with the last European elections. It has less of a say in many issues. So it is a different kind of, totally different kind of ball game. And unfortunately, I don't think at the moment climate change for most governments is the most important topic.
Well, with this optimistic note, thank you again, Caroline.
Don't you have a question that, I can
that will
ask on the... It's okay.
On the shoulder of our next speaker.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So next, I would like to call to the stage Erika Staël von Holstein. Erika has spent over 20 years building bridges between science, policy, and society. As co-founder and CEO of Reimagine Europa, she works to counter disinformation, reduce polarization, here we go, and create narratives that bring people together. Please welcome Erika Staël von Holstein from Reimagine Europa.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for asking me to be here. And it's an honor for me also to speak after Caroline De Gruyter, who is one of my board members and one of the best storytellers and can tell you, the most complex stories in a very easy and understandable way. And this is really what we have always tried to do at Reimagine Europa, where we actually have had from the get-go an in-house team of narrative scientists. And I will tell you more about what we actually mean when we talk about narratives, which is sometimes a bit misunderstood. But the starting point, I'd like to go to another one of my board members, Professor Manuel Castells, who always says, it's very interesting because we're evidence-based on everything we do, except when it comes to how our brain works and how communication works. There we pretend to live in an enlightenment world and that rationality is king and that we are also reasonable and understandable and we make our decision rationally. All evidence that looks at this, from neuroscience, behavioral science, philosophy, psychology, shows that we're very different animals. As Antonio Damasio, a third board member, I'm just showing off now, says, we are not rational beings who feel, we are emotional beings who think. And this is how our biology works. So if I asked you here in this room, how long would it take you to change your opinion on vaccines? I believe most of our are probably pro-vaccine here. That's just my guess. But would you be surprised to hear that it would take 6 to 12 months to make you change your mind if we put you from one place into a group of people who are all anti-vaxxers? This is how important psychology is and behavioral science, because for our survival, thinking like the people who surround us is so important that we will adapt very quickly. And we've seen that in the past 10 years. We've seen how thinking that was completely unthinkable before has become mainstream. And we can feel this. We blame echo chambers, we blame social media, we blame a lot of things. But I think what Caroline showed before is that our world has been living through enormous shifts. For me, I was a student when we had the financial crisis. And since then, it's just been one crisis after another. And I think what we've realized is the stories we used to tell ourselves before the financial crisis, of how the world worked, of how the finance worked, of how all those stories have kind of, people have lost trust in them. They don't believe in them anymore. They don't feel right. And I'm using here the word feel right, because let's remember, we don't use facts to explain how we think about the world. We use facts to justify how we feel about the world. Again, this is science, it's not me. And what I think we've realized, and Caroline put that very well, is today, and if you didn't realize that before the end of January, it's definitely clear now, we live in a Black Mirror world. Everything is upside down. All of a sudden, you know, the progressives are becoming conservatives, the conservatives are radical all of a sudden. Everything is a little bit different than it was. So how are the mental frames? So when I talk about narratives, I use the scientific approach to the word, and that means the mental frames that you use to understand reality. First myth I want to bust is, it's not that I have facts and everyone else has narratives. We all live in narratives. It's not possible to think without a narrative structure. We all tell stories. That's how we understand the world around us. I'm sorry for those of you who thought it was different. But these narratives are therefore very important. The second myth I want to say, obviously, narrative structures are not static. They change, exactly like language changes to adapt to the world around us, so do narratives. They change and transform, because a purpose of a narrative is to explain the world. And that comes to the third element that's very important to understand about narratives, is that narratives in themselves are not right or wrong. Facts within the narrative can be right and wrong, so don't take me here that I don't believe that there are evidence and fact, but the narrative structure themselves are not right or wrong. I can do mathematics with Roman numerals or with Indo-Arabic numerals. It's correct, but one is much more useful than the other. And this is where I think we have a huge opportunity here. Because the world is changing, we're living in a time where our old narratives don't quite manage to explain what's happening. So we're all looking for new narratives. We're all looking for new understandings. How are we working? Are we building new solutions together? What is the systems and the framework? And this is a huge opportunity, because it's in these times of huge narrative elasticity that we form the new explanations to understand the world. And as Churchill said, you know, we shape the buildings that we work in, and then those buildings shape us. So if we can shape the narratives and the way we think about it, those narratives are then going to shape how we advance. Are we going to have a more collaborative system? Are we going to have a more connected system? And this is where I think the FOODPath view is so interesting. I think we all know, and it was mentioned also by one of our participants here before, that in Europe, agriculture is known as the topic for the apple of discord. It's known in diplomatic circles that if you don't want a negotiation or a treaty to go well, start by talking about agriculture and fisheries and you will go nowhere. Everyone is fighting, nobody's agreeing. We saw that again with the farmers' protests. People are out there. This has become, again, such a dangerous role. And this is why polarization is so dangerous, because once it becomes highly polarized, you block any progress. And you can see that when talking to a lot of officials here in Brussels, like, oh, agriculture, there's a lot of noise about that. Let's try to do as little as possible on that. And this is where I think what the Commission has done now is very interesting, because they've realized that we've seen with the situation of the war in Ukraine, how that changed the geopolitical and the sovereignty issues around food structures. We've seen increasing insecurity with weather patterns. This is affecting farmers all across. We're getting new diseases that are completely eradicating whole harvests. The real problems of the farming system and of the food system in general are becoming very, very apparent. So how do we break the gridlock of the current polarization? And this is where there is this huge opportunity. We're seeing it with most organizations who often sit on the different side of the picket line. Some are on the farmers' protest, some are, you know, with the Green Deal. But everyone is agreeing that we need a new narrative to move forward, because we have very real problems to deal with. We have to say, how do we organize for the new diseases that are coming? And the positive thing is, and our research showed that we launched the first European Narrative Observatory to combat disinformation and polarization in Europe systemically. You can hear from the very complicated acronym that it was a co-funded project by the EU. So it has those kind of tendencies. But that a majority of polarization is based on misunderstanding. People have much more similar, irrelevant of which narrative community they belong to. They want quite similar things. We all want to have healthy, affordable food. We all want to have lovely trees and forests that we can go and walk in. We want to have drinking water that works. We want to have our children to be healthy. We want very similar things. It's not that anybody goes out there and says, oh, today I want to kill all the bees, or I don't want children to have affordable food. But because we live in different narrative communities, as I mentioned before, we use the same words to mean very different things. So often when we talk about food, or when we talk about climate, or when we talk about the Green Deal, we mean very, very different things. Wittgenstein used to say that an atheist and a believer can never have a real conversation because they talk around each other. They use words like faith or freedom and mean completely different things. And so they think they're talking to each other, but actually they're just talking around each other. And this is what we're doing constantly today. And to give you an example, we've done a lot of work on climate narratives, and I know I only have 3 minutes left, so I will try to be very, very short. But within the climate narratives, we are, for instance, and this is very related to agriculture, all narrative communities suffer from 3 narrative traps. So these are wrong thinking patterns. Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for looking at how these affected debates. So this is where we're thinking wrong for some reason or another. In agriculture and in climate, there are 3 that are very prevalent. One, the whole debate is issued as people versus planet. Not very useful, and not true at all. The second one is that to do good, we necessarily have to suffer. This is the biggest problem for the Green Deal. It's seen as a sacrifice. It's seen as a negative thing for 6 out of 7 narrative communities. And sustainability and innovation are seen as opposites. These are all thinking patterns that are in our heads, not out in reality. And this is where I think we need to get a bit wiser, because as somebody that works with narratives, I'm always told, oh, but narratives, that's fluff. But if you change and think narratives, the way we think about something is going to change how we act on it. If we're focusing on growth, we're going to look at that and we're going to concentrate on that. If we're focusing on defense, as Caroline said, everything is going to take that tend. We have such a power in our idea. Erika always says, power lies in the mind. So using the mind as an enormous tool for creative thinking should be at the top of our agenda. And this is why I think this process is so important. And as you mentioned before that, you like the working think global, act local. I think today we should switch it around. We should think local, but act global, because everyone is having the same problems. How are we dealing with taxation system? How are we going to deal with AI? How are we going to deal with climate volatility? You'll have local solutions to everything, but the problems are global. So how are we going to change our thinking patterns to all move in the same direction? Because this is the beauty of humanity. Ideas are the most important thing. It's what has taken humanity on all our different development things. It's believing in an idea. And the wonderful thing is, once you have an idea, we can all work towards the same goals without being coordinated at all. This is how powerful ideas are. This is why narratives are so important. And this is why I think it's so wonderful that part of the food path strategy is understanding we need to work with narratives. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Erika. So we have a few minutes now for questions. Is there? Yes, sir. The microphone is coming.
Thank you very much. I'm Nasser again. I wanted to ask about the role of art with shaping the narratives and also for the outreach. So sometimes I see that we, as a scientist, we sit together around the table and then with the strong assumptions and we make strong conclusions as well. But in practice, how do you see the not only artists in storytellers, those visual artists, or in any sense, how would you see the role of art to support shaping narratives and also for sharing narratives, ideally reaching to that common narrative that could support us for a better future.
I think art is fundamental. I always argued that the church has been the best, at using all of these emotions and in communication in history. Remember the music, the smells, the sounds to transport you away into a different reality. So I think that art is very important. And I think that we should embrace the importance of storytelling, whether it's through art, whether it's music, whether it's through film, because it really does change society and the direction that we're going. So how do you transform it? And one of the interesting things that I think that really good storytellers, whether artists or novelists or musicians do, is they see beyond the noise and look at what is the real focus, what is behind that. So a lot of often that why we say, for instance, their fact-checking and things like that is not very effective, is because, for instance, for anti-vaxxers, it's not about vaccines. Or for a lot of climate denialists, it's not about climate. So it's very difficult to explain with IPCC reports when it's about losing a job or affording food for your children. And art manages often to get down into the emotional of these things and actually unite us in understanding those emotional feelings rather than focusing on the different facts. So I fully support your suggestion that we should integrate more.
We have a few questions in the front. If we can move the microphone. There's one here. And okay, let's try and make these questions rather short so we can have maybe two of them. You go also? 3? Okay, so a few seconds, question, and same for the answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the inspiring talk. Siebe de Vries is my name. Both actually very inspiring talks we just heard. I have a question about these narrative communities that you mentioned, which are different, and also the example of Wittgenstein, because that is quite problematic now, because it seems that these narrative communities are growing, the different narrative communities, partly because of the internet, the information society. So the challenges are quite huge in order to kind of bridge those narrative communities. Do you have any ideas how to deal with that?
I only have 1 minute. I can talk for 2 hours about
More like 20 seconds.
Yes. That would be my short answer. Yes, and I'm very happy. Positive thing is, yes, we are reducing into echo chambers, but and my head of comms will be very angry because we haven't published this data yet, but nearly up to 85% of polarization is based on misunderstanding. So they're much more in common, and there's many more values. So if we focus on what we call narrative bridges, as opposed to, and I think when communicating, we often try to convince the other side that they're wrong and we're right, and that's a very unuseful way of adapting any communication. Our chief narrative scientist, he always says, people misunderstand narratives as tools of persuasion. They're really tools for listening. So if you can listen to what other people are saying, you can probably add and improve your story more, because you can understand why it might irk somebody, or why somebody's might be a fair. So that would be my initial thing, but I can talk for hours. I'm very happy to.
There is a cocktail networking session afterwards. So, yes, Anna.
Maybe I can buy you 20 more seconds, because it was a similar question of, could you just talk a bit about the impact of moving in different narrative communities or engaging with different narrative communities different than your own?
Well, a good friend of mine, he's a physicist, and he works with complex system science, so perfect for this kind of debate. He always says that people think that within different communities that the person, so for instance on social media, with most followers has the most impact. And it's not true. Science shows that actually it's the one who bridges most narrative communities that is most impactful. So again, maybe not on the KPIs, but actually in changing minds, that is the most important element. So I think learning how to do that bridging is a valuable skill, not only for yourself. Hegel, I'm going to be a bit controversial now, but in his I studied philosophy, unless somebody missed that point with me throwing out brilliant names. But he used to say in his philosophy of history that if you have an idea that you care about, you should talk to everyone you meet about it. Because one, you'll see if it holds up to scrutiny and criticism, but more importantly, other people will add things to the idea. So it will become a better idea, it will become a smarter idea. So this is what I think we should all go and having conversations, even uncomfortable conversations that we disagree with, but say, what is it you can contribute to my idea, as opposed to trying to convince you that you're wrong and I'm right, which is very difficult to do. And all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing that you're not that different, probably, than to that person, and that there's much more empathy and understanding underneath apparent difference of opinion. Sorry.
Oh, it's fascinating. So, last quick question, short answer, and on to our third speaker. Yes, you go.
Yes, many thanks to both of you for your fascinating presentations. I have a question about the remark that you made about Churchill. Changing our environment, that changes us, and we are changing and our environment changes also. We have been thinking about it also in FOODPathS with the creation and the putting more attention to living labs, where you're also changing the environment and the living lab is changed by the actors. Is that a way forward? And then a related question to that is, if Europe like to find its place back in the global world, maybe then not vis-à-vis the US or Russia, but the other parts of the world, how can we use this to build bridges to them by changing our environment, open them to them as well, and then co-create something together? How can we do that?
20 seconds? Impossible task.
2 days. Damien is souple.
Well, I think we're going to see enormous changes in thinking patterns because the world is changing so fast. What are the changes, thinking patterns we want to move forward? I think that is the core question. We've seen with the digital, we missed a lot of this, and we've created a world which maybe is not exactly what we want. And there is a big appetite now. So everywhere you travel, if you travel outside Europe or in international circuit, everyone is looking and saying, oh, Europe should do more. Can Europe do this? Can Europe do that? A different model, which is not the American, it's not the Chinese, but it's a separate, not even a European model, a global model that can be alternative to these two big giants that everyone feels they will not be able to compete with. And I think Europe has a real chance there of leading an alternative approach, where we're focusing on local solutions, but in a global context. So I think that what we should think local but act global. And if Europe can help to create that vision, we're on a good path. So I'm an optimist. I'm a glass half full person. I think this could be a good moment to change things up a bit and create a better world.
Thank you. There you go with the optimistic note. Thank you.
We need some yin and yang.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now on to our next speaker, Marco Cucé works at the intersection of philanthropy and climate action, supporting foundations that are shaping the future of sustainable food and agriculture. With experience from the UNFCCC, the Green Climate Fund, and the European Commission, he now drives collaborative climate efforts at the Philanthropy European Association. Please welcome Marco Cucé of Philea. So Marco, you have only 3 minutes because of time constraints.
I try to be brief.
Just kidding.
Thanks all. Is it working? Can you hear me? I was sitting at the back because I wanted to do my own walk of fame, so it felt good. I'm going to use my notes. I have a very bad memory. I'm very old now, 33, so my brain is not working as well when I was young. But joke aside, I'm going to speak to you today about the role of philanthropy in shaping the future of the food system, especially looking at the catalytic, is always a hard word for me, role of philanthropy in catalyzing change, system change, in this case, food system change, transformation. How many of you are aware of what philanthropy or have a good to very good knowledge of the sector? Let's see by seeing your hands raised. I see one person, 2, 3, 4, not too many. So it's good that I put this slide just to give you a very brief overview of what is philanthropy. Let me change my notes so that I don't forget anything. So philanthropy is basically private resources. By resources, we don't only mean financial resources, but also knowledge, also time dedicated directly to projects. So it's not only the funding part that I want also today to focus on. So private resources for the public interest, for the common good of everyone in society. It operates across all fields and sectors you can imagine: health, children and youth, journalism, keeping a healthy democracy, and environmental protection, in which I'm going to now dive in deeper. It connects also local realities with global challenges. As we heard a lot, it's very important to really connect the local people with the huge and across regional, national, and global challenges. And as well, philanthropy fosters collaboration and experimentation across fields. I really want to emphasize this collaboration word, as philanthropy does not like to act alone. It's seeking to collaborate with civil society organizations, including NGOs, with the private sector, with public institutions, but as we will see, it's often quite difficult to achieve. Let me jump now to the next slide, just to give you a small overview of key numbers regarding the philanthropic sector. We've just published these numbers on our website, on Philea website, showing that the sector is very, very wide. We have more than 175,000 registered public benefit foundations across Europe. That spans from a single individual who wanted to create his own foundation to big philanthropic organization. I can still speak. I see an alarm. All good, no? Yeah. So it's a very diverse sector, as you can see from the numbers. It assets and endowments are over 560 billion euros. And as you can see on the right side of the figures, the annual expenditure of the sector totals more than 76 billion. This, importantly, is not only on environmental, on food and agriculture, is all the spending across all sectors, just to give you a glimpse of what the philanthropic organizations are spending on a yearly basis. This is data for last year. Let's jump now on the philanthropy and food system transformation. It has a very important role, the sector, to play in ensuring that the transformation of the food system is sustainable, resilient, and equitable. Also, as we have heard from Caroline and Erika, I really like the analogy of Black Mirror in a crazy geopolitical momentum, with the US seizing a lot of funding, environmental funding, climate funding, USAID, but also at the European institutional level, we've seen quite a few worrying changes. So philanthropy is even more important today to really ensure that there is a level playing field, that all voices of society are heard and are meaningful also in the big transformation and discussion we are having at the political level in Europe. So I really want to emphasize that philanthropy matters and is actively involved in transforming society. In the next slide, I'm going to give you some of the key characteristics of the sector, especially in being key to achieve food system transformation. One second, here we go. So as you can see from the top left part, long-term perspective, philanthropy is not bound by short political or budget cycles. It allows sustained support over time. And these are critical aspects for systemic change, in this case for food system change. Philanthropy has also a strong trust-based relationship with a wide array of stakeholders, civil society organizations, universities, and so forth and so on. So it's really that collaborative and trust-based aspect that is hugely important for the sector. It doesn't want to go alone forward. It wants really to speak with all possible stakeholders and co-shape decisions and funding streams. It also can respond to crises flexibly and take risk on innovative ideas before they are proven at scale, at commercial scale. Nevertheless, it's also very important to note that it doesn't hold endless pot of money. So it needs to be strategic with the funding it gives. I just wanted to put this very important notion that philanthropy does not have all the money in the world, so it's important to be noted that this strategic aspect is always taken into consideration when taking decisions. Here are some key numbers regarding environmental philanthropy. This is a landmark report that has been prepared by my Philea colleagues on mapping environmental funding. So the report was commissioned in 2023, and it's on the left side. It shows the grants that environmental philanthropy organizations have given in Europe in 2021. As you can see, the agriculture and food sector is only 152 million, only. It's already a good amount, but compared to the full environmental funding, that is 1.6 billion euros per year, it's less than 10%. And importantly to note also, of those 1.6 billion euros, that relates only to 5% of total philanthropic funding in Europe. So of those 5% given to environmental funding, only 10%, even less, is given to agriculture and food. So probably these numbers increased in the last year. We are currently working, my wonderful colleagues at Philea are working into having a new mapping, an updated mapping this year. The table on the right was prepared by the European Commission with the University of Amsterdam 15 years ago. It's the only data that I could find, sadly, on philanthropic support by research areas. You can see that agricultural science is, I think, the fourth in the table. It's 84 million. Compared, for example, to medical science, that is 1.4 billion, it's much smaller. It's just to give you an idea of those numbers. It's 15 years ago. Probably it changes, probably a bit higher. Thank you. I have 5 minutes. I'll try to be brief. Let me then jump to the next slide. So, the philanthropic environmental foundations and organizations are taking more and more a multi-layered and multi-sectoral approach into changing the food systems, especially focusing on the linkages between local and global, as we have listened now a lot of times with all the presentation before me. The sector also takes an holistic approach, so considering the entire food system, from production to consumption. And also it really emphasizes that collaborating with other funders, civil society organizations and other actors is hugely important, because it amplifies impact across the system rather than only insulating into a single aspect. So philanthropy is all about collaboration in a single world. So I don't know if you've heard, the slide is a bit wrong, but I don't know if you've heard of, probably yes, of the 3 Ps, public-private partnerships. This is even more complicated. It's 4 Ps, public-private philanthropic partnership. So it's a concept that has been more and more growing inside the philanthropic sector, really to create collaboration with the public and private sector, because the philanthropic sectors, foundations, philanthropic organizations, really see that there is, to drive systemic changes, it cannot act alone. Together with civil society organizations, public and private sectors, there is really the potential to change the food system that is, as you all know, not sustainable at all at the moment. I really want to emphasize that this type of partnership are usually important, because often there is competition. This is my feeling across the various sectors, and this is really important as a mean to enhance action and hence the catalytic role of philanthropy in bridging local realities with big private and public sector that often lack accountability. So really having the voice of the small farmers or the consumer at the local level that goes up and up into taking also rather than a top-down approach, a bottom-up approach. So really important. I was speaking, so Philea together with Fondazione Cariplo are part of the FOODPathS consortium. I was speaking last week with the Fondazione Cariplo. They were telling me, Marco, it's really difficult to create this 4-piece model. Hence, FOODPathS has been working, so Cariplo, Philea, and all the other members of the consortium in proposing a new model that could enhance the inclusivity of the partnership. So that all voices are listened, because often philanthropy feels that they come too late into the decision making. So it's really important to be inclusive from the beginning. And this shameless publicity for tomorrow, we're going to discuss some of the key tools that we have discussed all together in the consortium in the breakouts tomorrow with the toolkit that also Hugo presented. So just to finish with a nice catch-up phrase, philanthropy alone cannot fix global food system, but it has the power to ignite transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Questions? Yes, Yasmina, up here in the front. Now we have a sprint from Emmanuel.
Marco, for this very interesting presentation. And we've been, of course, within FOODPathS talking and dreaming about the way things could be. You also mentioned these 4 Ps. And I was wondering, from your experience in FOODPathS now, in a way to try and prepare the ground, or maybe an environment to dream and experiment for these future partnerships, what would your advice be in terms of bringing this important P on board and really facilitating that this could happen?
It's a great question that I cannot answer in such a short time, but I think one of the most important aspects is trust. So foundations want to be involved, of course, with institutions and with the private sector. It's just sometimes they've maybe seen just as a small funding, extra funding, rather than being there from the beginning in creating the program or the funding model, or etc. So they really think to create a more inclusive partnership, they need to be at the table since the beginning. But there are existing partnerships in which philanthropy have been involved in the past. Not too many. I was struggling to find, to be honest. So it's just, I think, just a matter of refining the governance model, as we have done in FOODPathS, and hopefully it can be reused in the future for future consortium, and really allow the sectors to feel at ease and empowered also. So I would, welcome everyone to have a look at what we've been doing at FOODPathS. Hopefully it can be useful and used across all the consortium and other partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Yes, Hugo.
Thanks. Yeah, Marco, thanks a lot, not only for the presentation, but already for this cooperation for many years. The examples that you have been, that you found yourself, for example, the one in Milan is very well known with Cariplo and the community of Milan, but also with the industrial partners, to help to transform food waste into vulnerable assets for people who are in need of it. Would it make sense to better present those, and also to show not only the example where it works, but also how it works, in a way of changing maybe the mentality of the private sector parties in those initiatives, maybe the way that people are involved as volunteers in those examples? Should we spend more time to that in the future?
Thanks, Hugo. So I think you're referring especially on the communication side, because there are existing examples, how to showcase them and to ensure that they can show to the private sector and public institutions that there is a value and there is a successful partnership that happens. Your question is on how we can do this, or it's a $1 million question. I'm not a communication expert, but I'm totally agree that we need to be better also in communicating amongst the sectors on how we can mutually benefit from each other, and I don't know what will be the communication strategy, but I think it's something that we need to take into account surely to achieve greater changes and greater connections, collaboration, etc. Collaboration is really the word I want to use because it's key in all aspects of life, but especially in today's world, we cannot all just work in silos. We need to open arms together as much as possible and collaborate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So it goes back to also the idea of narratives and maybe our communication partners. So give the $1 million to UFIC and let's communicate on this. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you. Should I leave?
Thank you. So last speaker, but not the least, from crisis zones to Brussels, Esteban Arriaga Miranda has spent his career advancing humanitarian efforts and food access. As CEO of the European Food Banks Federation, he now works to make food systems more inclusive and resilient across Europe. Please welcome Esteban Arriaga Miranda of FEBA.
Thank you very much. I also have my time. Do you have the slides? Good afternoon, thank you for having me. I know it's late in the day, so I'll try to rush through. I was asked to talk about access, affordability, and resilience in food systems. Please bear in mind that that is an extremely complex, big subject, so I will gloss over many of the aspects that I will touch in this presentation and focus on what the food banks are doing across Europe. So, please bear in mind, I recruited Mr. Sen, who is a Nobel Prize economics winner, who basically said people having access to food is not a sole production problem that we can solve. There are many other elements that play a stake in this: social, economic, and legal. There's a lot of discussion about production, but those are not the only barriers for people to access food in the right qualities or in the right quality. And I have some proof of that. And I did not win the Nobel Peace Prize, by the way, but the Economics Prize. So this is Europe. Now, these statistics had a lot of inequalities across the continent, and we talk about a very rich continent. So I just put this because I know that I'm talking to like-minded people, and you know probably these statistics by heart. But what I want to show is that we have a profound inequality in our society. We are inching to a society where food is a privilege, not a right. And I think if we want to live in that society, we're getting there. 1 in 5 people cannot afford the quantity or the quality of food, or they have to make very serious, difficult decisions. Do I pay the rent? Do I warm my apartment? Or do I provide a nutritious meal to my family? And this is not only people, we see the news. It's undocumented refugees or immigrants. This is also pensioners that work their whole lives and now cannot make the purchase of their food. This is people with jobs, single-headed households that cannot access the food in the same way that most of us in this room probably do. So we have to keep that in mind as we move along, because now we're touching on the access and affordability, and I said already throws in an idea regarding this. We'll talk a little bit about the sustainability, or a dimension of that sustainability in our food systems. Now, again, talking about production, and why are we throwing so much food away if it's a production issue? So there is a problem, and thank you, Eurostat and Nufik and everybody for that beautiful chart. So we're throwing millions of tons of food that then ends up in landfills across Europe, across the world, that pollute our water, releases harmful emissions. And then there's people in need. Where is the disconnect? There is a disconnect. And I think we all know this. So hoping for those that didn't know, at least you're starting to get an idea of the challenges, but also the opportunities that exist. And you might not know these two gentlemen. They are the founders of FEBA, the European Food Bank. So I'm very happy to show them to you. So that's Mr. Bernard André and André Hubert, who founded FEBA in 1986. They were pioneers of circularity. It's a new buzzword. We've heard it. It's 40 years. Food banks have been older than that. there is already a lot of work going on. There's a lot where we can meet the people and the planet together to find some solutions. No, we're not going to solve poverty in Europe, but we contribute to alleviating consequences of poverty. So almost 40 years ago, they started this movement that in 2023 was able to recover and redistribute over 800,000 tons of food. That's not little. I don't even know how many stadiums, but it's a lot. We have warehouses across the continent in 30 countries where our members work. We are on the shoulders of our volunteers who work. There's over 90,000. That number triples when we do food recoveries in the different supermarkets. Some of you might know it. In Spain, in Italy, it's a recurring feature. Some of that food, by the way, just FYI, most 65% is recovered, would have ended in a landfill. Other is for surplus from EU support, ESF+. Other is also that we purchase. And we're forced to purchase because demand keeps rising for food banks. So I'm very happy and proud. Theo, look, this is huge. This is a failure. The food banks exist is a failure. There should not be any food banks. I should be playing golf or doing something else. But there is a problem here. 12 million people touched. And there's far, far more. Still need help. So now we're talking about the people. We're talking about the sustainability of those elements. We also want to talk about the quality, because it's more we see the WHO about obesity crisis in Europe and about the health consequences of that. So we also are very knowledgeable in banks that we need to try to give people the possibility to access quality food, fresh produce, plant-based and animal-based proteins, etc. So this is a breakdown of what has been distributed in 2023. As you can see, there's a lot of fruits and vegetables. We are always striving to maximize this, to give the people options. And I'll come back to that a bit later, but I'm running. So if I would tell you that there is a bank, oh, now I can see it here, perfect. If there is a bank where you give €1 and you get 5 back, you would invest in it. I would, especially now. I would put all my money in that bank. This is a study conducted in 3 different countries, completely uncoordinated, but for this it's very good because we actually found similar outcomes of this social return on investment through the food bank's work. So as you can see, for every euro, it translates to savings at the household level, where then they can pay the rent or they can warm their homes, to the state, the duty bearers, because if it's not the food banks, who else is doing it? I hope the government. So there are savings across. What is missing, I apologize for that, is that we also identified there is a lot of health benefits coming out of the interventions. From the mental side, the stress of making those decisions and having that kind of support given and extended to the households. We've seen that, and it's really documented. This is not done by food banks, it's commissioned by food banks, but it's done by academic institutions that came out with these findings. We are not very good at showcasing our impact, but I'm glad that I'm here to show it to you, and I have to move fast. The pillars, and we're talking about partnerships, so I had to kind of focus on the partnerships towards the end. We are all about partnerships. In fact, food banks live in the center of a huge ecosystem in which we work through 40,000 organizations across Europe. 40,000. Think of 40,000 contracts. That's a lot. Because most of the recipients of our work, and that's why we're called food banks, are other organizations working in the social sphere. Increasingly, we are reaching directly to people because there's a need, not because we want. But there's also the push that now NGOs have to solve societal problems. That's not the intention. Anyway, so volunteers, 90,000. This is people that volunteer their time. If you would have to pay these people to do the work that we do, you would at least have to do 1 billion per year. They are, with their passion and solidarity, working day by day to deliver food to 12 million people. Partnerships, and this is the key, I think, in the supply system, it's the big corporations that work with us and give us the food. We have a lot of best practices where even we're invited behind in the factories, and we do walkthroughs with the companies to identify points where we can collect loss or waste and then distribute that food safely to people. So there are so many ways in which we can work together in the private and public sphere to meet together and have positive outcomes. So if there's anything you take from this presentation, it's that there is a lot of things going on that are positive, but it does require collective effort, 40 years trajectory building these relationships. Again, I think I actually copy and paste, I think that from another presentation, because we live in the same environment, so we know the same, more partnerships, more things. But one important thing, especially that I wanted to add, is that people want healthy food. There is this conception that people that don't have the means, they only eat cake and sugar. No. We have seen it in our food banks. People, we want milk, we want produce. So there is awareness that good and a quality meal is important. So the fact that there is that is very important for us as well, food banks, for the food systems, for society. We also see, for example, in country-specific price changes. The moment the price of milk goes up, in France, for example, almost the next day we have an increased demand for milk. So the level of precarity of these people is really razor thin. And this is something that we need to keep in mind when we talk about green transition. You will not have change, sustainable change for the planet, for the people, if you leave 20% of the people behind. You can't. And we all like to buy bio. Who can afford it? So we need to have an inclusive, collective discussion how we can do this revolution as a society together without leaving a section of our society behind, because that's just not going to happen. And for the rest, again, that's the appeal. I think my takeaway from that is that there are things that we can do. There are challenges, but there are also possibilities. And it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of partnership to make it work. And I think the food banks, if any, are a very small puzzle of our very big discussion. And I hope, if anything, it leaves you something positive to end the day today. Thank you.
Thank you. We're back to the puzzle, but thank you for the crucial focus, I think, on accessibility and affordability as pillars of sustainable food systems. Questions? Yes, Mina?
Just easy ones, please. Easy questions.
Easy questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation that I think is really humbling, because I'm sitting here and I'm being paid to sit here, and I was wondering who is not being paid to sit here. And when you mention 94%,
standing,
94% of the people making sure that this amazing work can be done are volunteers, it makes me, on the one hand, it makes me think, what a beautiful world. On the other hand, it makes me sad, because it really shows that we don't value this huge impact that this work has. We've privatized our food system, and we are not willing to value what is most important, to provide food as a human right to people. And I was wondering if you could reflect on that. I don't know if that's an easy question.
Full disclosure, I'm also getting paid. 6% of our workforce is paid. So we are professionals, because it's very important that that food it's delivered safely. So we need warehouse managers, we need logisticians, we need food specialists. So there is a cohort of people that make sure that we are able to coordinate this huge amount. But it's very, if you ever go to a food bank or a food kitchen or etc., you will realize the commitment is bringing the community together. Food, in many ways, is also I wouldn't say, it's what brings the community together, and it's usually the community for the community. And I think nowadays, in the big cities where we lose contact with each other, the food banks in many ways are a rallying point where people come together, have the same values, that maybe the same narratives, that come and want to change something. So that's and I really, without them, we would not be able. The multiplier effect is because of them.
Other questions? Yes, Hugo.
Thanks a lot. And it was a pleasure also to already talk last week about it and about your dreams, because it's a passionate story that you're telling us. And also a sad one, as Yasmina said, if you look to what's taking place today, that it is not even possible that some people can afford it. And we have also seen the figures in France that parents cannot take 3 meals a day, but need to live with 2 and leave the food to their children. So it's becoming a very serious problem. And it is. Now, my question is, one, you have a direct contact with the citizens. What are they telling us what we should do differently? Except, of course, their willingness to eat also more healthy. But what is their opinion about the changes? And secondly, how could you also be involved more on the production side, because you are now depending on, you are at the end of the change. How can your organization change the way of functioning of change that you are also involved in the provision of sufficient food?
Let me start with the last one. Well, I'll remember the first. Sorry. So we are going towards the production, agriculture, which is not part of the waste, it's part of maybe the loss. How we define our food system is extremely important for us, because we are actually working at agriculture, but it takes a lot of effort and energy. And many times they don't see agriculture as part of, so if it stays in the field and it rots in the field, it's not food waste. For us, we want that food. And in many countries, they've done partnerships in which with the farmer, they say, actually, we will come with our volunteers, pick up this food and take it. And many times it works. So we're always exploring because we want that fresh produce as well. So we're trying to contact across the food system to understand where we can add value. And I think that's it. We are also trying to work to identify opportunities where we can work with the different stakeholders, whether it's government, whether it's the commission, whether it's agriculture. The first one I forgot, apologies.
Yeah, the first question, many thanks for the second answer. The first question was about what can we better learn from the people themselves. You are in direct contact with the citizens, so what kind of messages do they have for us and for all actors in the food systems, how to change it?
It's a tough one to speak on behalf of 30 countries and 90,000 people, because Europe is uniquely diverse. But it is nice, and I think you mentioned also one of the speakers before me, that while we are living in 30 different countries, different languages, etc., they do speak the same passion for that mission, which is we can do better. And I think they're worried for many other reasons. One is that, for example, there is less food being given to food banks, partly for good reasons. Retailers and companies are getting better at selling the food towards the end, which is good, we applaud that, but for us, we're still stuck with the needs of the people. So the planet is doing better, but the needs of the people. So as companies go better and better at selling the food, that means less food for the food banks, but also then we get the food banks, we have the food with even less turnaround. Instead of having 1 week to distribute it safely, now we have days in which we have to move the infrastructure. So we have to be very dynamic, professional how we do it to do it right. So we are in a hard place because as some parts of the food system are getting better, we still have 12 million people knocking on the door saying we need help. At the same time, as you've seen from the chart, there's still a lot more that needs to be done. We need to consolidate, we need to bring more retailers, more agriculture, more partners to work with through food banks, and I would say through civil society as meaningful partners, not as charities, to give charity as partners. And we have the scale and the knowledge to be partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Esteban. Yes. Okay, so thank you to all of our 4 keynote speakers this afternoon. They have left the stage, but please give them one more, your most enthusiastic yet round of applause for Erika, Caroline, Marco, and Esteban. You thought this was the end and we will go now to the cocktail network session, but this is only the beginning for you. As you saw, there were 3 challenges for the coffee break. Wait for the 5 challenges now for the cocktail session, networking session. Okay, so posters, puzzle piece, quiz, feedback, and I'll keep the fifth one. So now we invite you to go take a drink, you know where they are now, and come back to the poster room here and visit the posters in the room. We have several posters from several projects. You can see the organizations or the projects displayed on the slides. So FOODPathS, Future Foods, FoodClick, the Food Systems Science Network, the Chorizo Project, Clever Food and Soil. Presenters should be by their posters to engage in discussions. Then we had number 2, the puzzle piece. You know about it now, but look at the puzzle piece on your badge and engage in conversation with others. We still have also the quiz, so the FOODPathS quiz. Replies are ongoing, so also feel free to go and take the quiz. Then we also have the feedback form. So you filled it in maybe in the previous session. We want to have your feedback, please. So please return your paper form at the reception desk in the box. Thank you. And on your way back tonight or anytime in traffic or when cooking, put FOODcast on your headphones. We have a series of podcasts episodes for you to listen to. This was the bonus challenge. This was not even in the 5 ones. And the 5th one is enjoy the cocktail. Thank you very much.